The space around Neptune was quiet, too quiet for Lieutenant Commander John Hayes. He sat at his station on the bridge of the USS Horizon, staring at the sensor readings. The Horizon was not a big ship. It was just an Earth exploration vessel with a crew of 50. Their mission was simple: map the outer edges of the solar system. Boring work, but necessary. "Sir, I'm picking up something strange," John said, his eyes fixed on the screen. "Energy readings like nothing I've ever seen before." Captain Susan Miller walked over. She was a tall woman with short brown hair and 20 years of space experience. "Show me," John pointed to the unusual pattern on his screen. "It's massive, Captain, and it's not moving." "Could be a sensor malfunction," suggested Navigation Officer Alan West. He was young and always careful. Captain Miller shook her head. "Run a diagnostic, but also change course. Let's take a closer look." As the Horizon adjusted its path, the crew grew tense. Humanity had yet to make contact with alien life. Every unusual reading brought both hope and fear. Distance to anomaly. 50,000 kilometers, called out Alan. Visual range in 5 minutes. John's heart beat faster. This was his 4th deep space mission, but the thrill of discovery never got old. He had joined the space service to see new things, and maybe today would be the day. "Visual contact established," announced Communications Officer Lisa Grant, putting it on the main screen. The entire bridge fell silent. On the screen appeared not one ship, but hundreds. They floated in space, dark and still like a forest of metal trees. The ships were sleek and clearly built for war, with what looked like weapon ports along their sides. "My God," whispered Captain Miller. "Are they dead?" John checked his readings. "I'm detecting minimal power signatures, Captain. They're running on emergency systems only." "Any signs of battle damage?" asked Security Chief Rick Owens. His hand moved instinctively to his sidearm. "None that I can see," replied John. "They just seem turned off." Captain Miller stood straight, her decision made. "This is a potential first contact situation, people, and those ships might have survivors who need help. Standard protocol applies. Lisa, broadcast our first contact message on all frequencies." Lisa nodded and began sending Earth's universal greeting, a simple message of peace translated into mathematical patterns that any advanced civilization should understand. For 5 tense minutes, there was no response. Then Lisa's console lit. "Up, Captain, we're receiving a reply. It's in English." "In English?" Miller raised an eyebrow. "Put it through." The voice that came through was strange, slightly mechanical but understandable. "Unknown vessel. This is Commander Zex Tara of the Galactic Concordat 3rd Fleet. We are in dire need of assistance. Our translation matrix has analyzed your language. Can you understand me?" Captain Miller took a deep breath. "This is Captain Susan Miller of the Earth vessel Horizon. We understand you and are prepared to offer assistance. What is your situation?" The main screen changed to show the interior of the alien ship. The bridge was lit by dim emergency lights. In the center stood a tall being with green-blue scales that shimmered even in the low light. Its eyes had vertical pupils, and it wore what appeared to be a uniform with strange symbols. "Captain Miller, my fleet was traveling through this sector when we encountered an unusual quantum phenomenon. It drained all power from our main systems. We have been stranded here for 14 of your Earth days with only emergency life support functioning. Our distress calls to the Concordat have gone unanswered due to our communication systems being affected." Captain Miller glanced at Chief Engineer Paul Jackson, who had just arrived on the bridge after being called. "Can we help them, Chief?" Paul scratched his beard, thinking, "Maybe. I'd need to see their systems." The alien commander tilted his head. "You would approach our vessels without knowing our capabilities or intentions? You're in trouble, aren't you?" Miller said simply. "Where we come from, when someone's in trouble, you help first and ask questions later." This statement seemed to confuse the alien. "But we are armed military vessels of an unknown power. By all logical protocols, you should be retreating and calling for your military forces." John couldn't help but smile at the alien's confusion. It was so typically human to rush in to help. Sometimes their greatest strength was also their greatest weakness. "Commander Zextara," said Miller firmly, "Earth is still new to deep space. We don't have military forces to call. What we do have is a good engineer and a willingness to help. Will you accept our assistance?" There was a pause as the alien seemed to confer with others off-screen. Finally, he turned back. "We accept your offer, Captain Miller. You may dock with our flagship." 2 hours later, John found himself walking through the massive alien ship beside Captain Miller, Chief Jackson, and Security Chief Owens. They wore simple environment suits as a precaution, though the aliens had assured them their atmosphere was compatible. The alien ship was enormous compared to the Horizon. Its corridors could fit 3 humans walking side by side, and the ceiling was uncomfortably high. The design was all smooth curves and strange angles that somehow felt wrong to human eyes. Their escort was a smaller alien of the same species as Commander Zexitara, who introduced herself as Lieutenant Kavex. "Our vessel is the pride of the Concordat fleet," she explained. "Or at least it was before this embarrassing incident." The engine room was a vast chamber dominated by a dark spherical object surrounded by control panels. Around it moved aliens of different species, some with too many limbs, others with none at all. All wore similar uniforms with varying insignia. Commander Zextara waited for them. Beside him stood another alien with pale blue skin and 4 arms. "Captain Miller, this is Chief Engineer Mock Laren. He will explain our situation." The 4-armed alien stepped forward. "Your assistance is unexpected. Our quantum fold drive was caught in a dimensional shift that reversed the polarity of our power matrix. All 327 ships in our fleet were affected simultaneously." Paul Jackson nodded, then asked, "May I?" gesturing to the control panel. After receiving permission, he began examining the alien technology. His expression changed from confusion to interest to something like amusement. "What do you find humorous, Engineer Jackson?" asked Zextara. "Nothing, sir. It's just, your systems are incredibly advanced, but they're also incredibly complex. Sometimes the most elegant solution isn't the most practical." Around them, the alien crew watched with what John guessed was skepticism. These aliens clearly represented a civilization far more advanced than Earth's. Yet here was Paul Jackson, poking at their technology like a curious child. "I think," Paul said slowly, "we might be able to help you after all." Commander Zexitara's scales shifted color slightly. "How could your technology possibly restore our quantum drives when our own engineers cannot?" Paul smiled. "Sometimes you don't need fancy technology. Sometimes you just need a fresh perspective." As Paul began explaining his ideas to the alien, engineers John noticed other alien crew members gathering to watch. Their expressions were hard to read, but their body language suggested disbelief. One tall, insect-like alien leaned toward another and clicked something that the translation matrix converted as, "These primitives think they can fix what our best minds cannot." The arrogance of young species never ceases to amaze. Captain Miller either didn't hear or chose to ignore the comment. Instead, she turned to Commander Zexitara. "While our engineers work on the problem, perhaps you could tell us more about the Galactic Concordat? It seems we have new neighbors we should get to know." The commander's vertical pupils widened slightly. "Indeed, Captain Miller. Though I suspect it is the Concordat that has much to learn about its new neighbors." Around them, the massive alien armada continued to drift, powerless among the stars. But for the first time in 2 weeks, there was hope aboard the flagship. Help had arrived from the most unlikely source imaginable, a small planet called Earth that nobody in the galaxy had paid any attention to before today. Chief Engineer Paul Jackson couldn't stop grinning as he studied the alien power core schematics. The other Horizon crew members noticed his unusual mood. "What's so funny, Paul?" asked Lieutenant Kate Rogers, the ship's language expert. She had been working with the translation system for 6 hours straight and needed a break. "These power systems," Paul said, pointing to the holographic display the aliens had provided. "They're amazing. Beautiful, really, but so needlessly complex." Kate looked at the display but couldn't make sense of the swirling patterns. "Can you fix them?" "Maybe." Paul scratched his chin. The aliens keep saying they need special materials from their home systems. Crystals that can only be grown in specific gravity conditions, metals that don't exist in our solar system, so we can't help them after all. Kate sounded disappointed. Paul's grin got wider. I didn't say that. I said their solution needs those things, but there might be another way. In the main engineering bay of the alien flagship, Paul had set up a temporary work area. Captain Miller had approved bringing over essential equipment from the horizon. Now Paul and 3 crew members worked side by side with 6 alien engineers of different species. Mock Laren, the 4-armed alien engineer, watched as Paul drew simple diagrams on a portable whiteboard. This will never work, Mock Laren said. His translator gave his voice a musical quality that contrasted with his harsh words. The power requirements are too great. Your primitive electromagnets cannot possibly generate enough energy to jumpstart our quantum cores. Paul kept drawing. Maybe not one electromagnet, but what about 500 of them working together? The materials. We don't need your special materials, Paul interrupted. We can use parts from your own ships, non-essential components. The aliens' forearms all moved in what seemed to be a gesture of shock. Dismantle our vessels, that is unthinkable. Kate, who had been quietly observing the exchange, stepped forward. Why is it unthinkable? The parts can be replaced later, right? Mock Laren's skin changed color slightly, turning a deeper blue. These vessels are sacred. They are built according to designs passed down for generations. Each component is blessed by the concordant engineers. To modify them with foreign technology would be desecration. Kate nodded slowly, understanding, dawning on her face. She turned to Paul. Cultural issue. Their ships aren't just machines to them. Paul sighed and put down his marker. Look, I understand tradition. We have plenty of those on Earth. But right now, your ships aren't sacred. Vessels, they're floating coffins. Your life support systems will fail in about 2 weeks by my calculation. The alien engineers conferred among themselves in clicks and whistles too fast for the translator to catch. Finally, Mock Laren turned back to Paul. Explain your plan again. We will consider it. For the next 3 days, Paul worked almost without sleep. His plan was simple in concept but complex in execution. Create a massive electromagnetic induction array that could transfer energy directly into the alien ship's emergency systems, bypassing their damaged quantum cores. From there, the ship's own systems could slowly restore power to the main drives. The human engineers and crew from the horizon worked in shifts. Captain Miller ordered all non-essential systems on their own ship powered down to save energy for the rescue operation. On the 4th day, as they were preparing for the first test, a small alien ship appeared near the stranded Armada. Unlike the other vessels, this one had power. It docked with the flagship. Admiral Veshador has arrived, Commander Zextara informed Captain Miller. His voice contained something that the translation system identified as worry. The Admiral was taller than Commander Zextara, with darker scales and gold markings on his uniform. He entered the engineering bay with 4 armed guards and stared at the humans with cold reptilian eyes. What is the meaning of this? He demanded, looking at the partially disassembled panels and the human equipment connected to alien technology. You allow these primitives to defile our sacred vessels? Commander Zextara stood at attention. Admiral, these humans came to our aid when our distress calls went unanswered. They believe they can restore power to the fleet. With this? The Admiral gestured at Paul's contraption, a web of wires connecting modified alien parts to human-designed control systems. This looks like something a child would build. Paul stepped forward, wiping grease from his hands. Sir, Admiral, I understand your concern, but with all due respect, your fleet has been stranded for almost 3 weeks. Your engineers couldn't fix the problem with your technology. Maybe it's time to try something different. The Admiral's scales rippled in what seemed like anger. And who are you to address me so directly? Paul Jackson, Chief Engineer of the USS Horizon. And right now, possibly your best hope of getting your fleet moving again. A tense silence filled the room. Even the alien engineers had stopped working to watch the confrontation. Captain Miller moved to stand beside Paul. Admiral Veshdor, we understand your reluctance, but Commander Zexitara made the decision to accept our help because lives are at stake. We're not asking you to change your ways or adopt our technology permanently. We're just offering a temporary solution to an immediate problem. The Admiral looked from the humans to Commander Zexitara, then to Mock Laren and the other alien engineers. Is this true? You believe this primitive approach might work when our most advanced methods have failed? Mock Laren's forearms moved in a complex gesture. The theory is sound, Admiral. It is not how we would approach the problem, but that may be its strength. We have been too constrained by our traditional methods. Admiral Veshidor seemed to consider this for a long moment. Finally, he stepped back. Proceed with the test, but know that if you damage our vessels further, there will be consequences. 2 hours later, the engineering bay was filled with tension as Paul made final adjustments to his makeshift power transfer system. Humans and aliens alike had moved to safe positions behind protective barriers. Ready? Paul asked, looking at Captain Miller. She nodded. Do it. Paul took a deep breath and pressed the activation sequence on his control pad. For several seconds, nothing happened. Then, with a low hum that gradually increased in pitch, the lights on the control panels of the alien ship began to flicker. Power levels at 2%, reported Mock Laren. 3%, 5%, rising steadily. The emergency lights in the bay dimmed briefly, then suddenly brightened to full strength. Around them, systems that had been silent for weeks began coming online with musical tones and soft glows. Throughout the massive flagship, lights flickered on. The alien crew members began making sounds. High chirps, low rumbles, and melodic trills that the translation system couldn't interpret, but that clearly expressed joy. Commander Zexitara turned to Admiral Veshidor. It's working, Admiral. The human solution is working. The Admiral's expression remained difficult to read, but he gave a slight nod. So it seems. Paul grinned at his team as the power levels continued to rise. Not bad for primitive technology, huh? Captain Miller put a hand on his shoulder. Don't gloat, Paul. That's not why we're here. No, he agreed, watching as the alien engineers rushed to check other systems. We're here to help, and it looks like we're doing just that. As the day ended, word spread through the alien armada that power was being restored to the flagship. The human method would need to be replicated for each of the 327 stranded vessels. But now there was hope where before, there had been only despair. What the humans didn't yet realize was that news of their unconventional rescue was already spreading beyond the stranded fleet, transmitted by Admiral Veshidor's scout ship to the wider galactic concordat. And the galaxy was about to take notice of humanity in a way no one on Earth could have imagined. News travels fast, even in the vastness of space. 1 week after the successful power transfer to the alien flagship, ships from all over the sector began to appear. Some came to help, bringing supplies and technical support. Others came just to watch. On the bridge of the USS Horizon, Captain Susan Miller stared at the sensor display with growing concern. How many ships are we tracking now, John? Lieutenant Commander Hayes checked his readings. 27 non-concordant vessels, Captain. Most are keeping their distance, but 3 have requested permission to approach the fleet. And we have no idea who they are or what they want, Miller said with a sigh. What had started as a simple rescue mission was becoming increasingly complicated. Commander Zexitara's image appeared on the main screen. Captain Miller, we have identified the approaching vessels. They belong to representatives of the Stellar Assembly, a political organization separate from the Concordat. Are they friendly? Miller asked. They are. Political, Zexitara replied, his scales shifting color slightly. I must inform you of something we have not shared previously. Our fleet was not simply passing through this sector. We were on a classified mission to suppress a rebellion in the outer systems. The rebels call themselves the Free Worlds Alliance. Miller's expression hardened. So we've been helping a military force on its way to put down a rebellion? That's information you might have shared earlier, Commander. Would it have changed your decision to help us? Zexatara asked. Miller paused before answering. I don't know. But I don't like being kept in the dark. Back on Earth, similar conversations were happening at the highest levels of government. Director Nicole Bennett of the United Earth Space Agency sat in an emergency meeting with world leaders, trying to explain the situation. To be clear, said the President of the African Union, a single Earth ship with 50 crew members is now at the center of what appears to be a galactic political crisis? Director Bennett nodded. Yes, Madam President. The USS Horizon made first contact with this Concordate 3 weeks ago. Since then, they've been helping repair an alien armada that, we've just learned, was on its way to suppress a rebellion. Can we recall the Horizon? Asked the European Union Chancellor. Extract our people before this gets worse? Captain Miller believes that would be seen as taking sides, Bennett replied. She's requested permission to stay and complete the rescue operation, even though it means helping one side of a conflict we know nothing about. The Chinese premier leaned forward, eyes narrowed. Bennett took a deep breath. Captain Miller's exact words were, "We started with humanitarian aid. We can't suddenly decide some lives are worth saving, and others aren't based on politics we don't understand." The room fell silent as the leaders considered this. Finally, the U.S. President spoke. What do we know about these two sides, the Concordate and the rebels? Very little, Bennett admitted. We're gathering information as quickly as we can, but our only source is the aliens themselves. Back aboard the Concordate flagship, Chief Engineer Paul Jackson had made a disturbing discovery. He approached Captain Miller, who was meeting with Commander Zexatara and Admiral Veshdor. Captain, I need to speak with you, Paul said, his face serious. It's about the power failure, Miller nodded. Go ahead. It wasn't a natural phenomenon, Paul said, looking directly at the alien officers. The damage to the power systems follows a pattern. Someone did this deliberately. Admiral Veshdor's scales darkened. That is a very serious accusation, Engineer. Jackson. It's not an accusation, it's an observation, Paul replied calmly. The quantum fluctuation that hit your ships was targeted specifically at your power signature. It was a weapon. Commander Zexatara turned to the Admiral. Could the rebels have developed such technology without our knowledge? Impossible, the Admiral snapped. None of the outer systems have the scientific capabilities to create such a weapon. Unless they had help, Miller suggested quietly. Heavy silence fell over the room. Finally, Admiral Veshdor spoke. If what you say is true, Engineer Jackson, then this was not just an attack on our fleet. It was an act of war against the Concordate itself. That evening, the Horizon received an unexpected communication. It came through on a frequency the aliens weren't monitoring. Security Chief Owens to Captain Miller. You need to see this. Miller hurried to the communications room where Rick Owens was reviewing a message. What is it? It came in encrypted, he said. Addressed specifically to us, not the Concordate. Whoever sent it knows exactly who we are. The message appeared on the screen. It showed a humanoid figure with pale, translucent skin and large eyes. People of Earth, I am Delegate Sariel of the Free Worlds Alliance. We have been watching your interactions with the Concordate fleet. You should know that the Galactic Concordat is not a peaceful organization. They are an empire that has conquered hundreds of worlds and suppressed countless civilizations. The fleet you are helping was sent to punish our worlds for daring to claim independence. We beg you to reconsider your alliance with them. Miller watched the message twice before speaking. Can we verify any of this? Not really, Owens replied. But it matches some patterns I've noticed. The Concordate ships all have different species serving on them, but always with the reptilians in command. And have you noticed how the other species always defer to them? It's not just military discipline, it feels like fear. Miller finished the thought. So we might be helping the bad guys. Or this could be rebel propaganda, Owens countered. We just don't know enough. Meanwhile, Kate Rogers had been spending time with alien crew members learning about their cultures. She brought her findings to Miller. "Captain, I've been talking with crew members from different species," she explained. "The Concordat includes over 50 species, but the Zentra, that's Commander Zextara's species, hold most of the power. Some of the other species joined voluntarily for protection. Others were incorporated." "Conquered, you mean?" Miller said. Kate nodded. "But it's complicated. Many of them have been part of the Concordat for generations. They see it as maintaining order in the galaxy. The rebels are fighting for independence, but independence isn't always peaceful either." Captain Miller rubbed her temples. What had started as a simple rescue had placed humanity at a crossroads that would determine their place in galactic society. The next day, a new complication arose. Evidence of sabotage was discovered in the power transfer systems. Someone had tried to reverse the flow, which would have caused an explosion that could have destroyed both human and alien ships. "We have a saboteur on board," Admiral Veshador declared. "A rebel sympathizer." "Or someone who doesn't want our rescue operation to succeed," Miller countered. "We shouldn't jump to conclusions." A joint security team of humans and aliens began an investigation. Tensions rose throughout the fleet as suspicion spread. The rescue operation slowed as new security protocols were implemented. On the 10th day, as the power restoration reached the halfway point, Admiral Veshdor made an announcement. "Once the fleet is fully operational, we will resume our mission to the outer systems." "And what exactly is that mission?" Miller asked directly. "To restore order," the Admiral replied. "The rebel worlds have violated Concordat law and must be brought back into compliance, by force, if necessary." The Admiral's voice was cold. "This is not your concern, Captain Miller. Your task is to repair our vessels, not question Concordat policy." That night, Miller called her senior officers together. "We have a decision to make," she told them. "Do we continue helping the Concordat knowing what their intentions are, or do we walk away? If we leave now, we'll be making a political statement," Owens pointed out, "taking the rebels' side. And if we stay, we're taking the Concordat side," countered John Hayes. Paul Jackson, who had been quiet, finally spoke. "There might be a third option. These aliens are advanced, but they think inside rigid boxes. We've already shown them new ways to solve technical problems. Maybe we can show them new ways to solve political ones too." Miller looked at her team. 50 humans caught in the middle of a galactic conflict. "Let's try," she said. "Earth is new to this galactic community. Maybe that gives us a perspective these older civilizations have lost." What none of them realized was that their actions over the next few days would reshape the political landscape of hundreds of worlds for generations to come. 3 months had passed since the USS Horizon first discovered the stranded alien Armada. In that time, everything had changed. For the crew, for Earth, and for the galaxy. Captain Susan Miller stood by the large window in the New Earth Embassy, on the Concordat Central Station. From here she could see ships of dozens of designs coming and going. Some were massive Concordat vessels with their distinctive green energy signatures. Others were smaller, faster ships from independent worlds. And a few, still a novelty in this part of space, and were human-designed vessels with the blue Earth emblem. "Quite a view, isn't it?" said a familiar voice. Miller turned to see Commander Zextara approaching. His scales had a new golden sheen, a sign of his recent promotion. "It's amazing how quickly things can change," Miller replied. 3 months ago, humans had never met aliens. Now we're trading with a dozen worlds and setting up embassies. Zextara made a gesture that the humans had learned meant agreement. "Your species has surprised us at every turn, Captain Miller. I still remember Admiral Veshador's face when you proposed the peace conference." Miller smiled at the memory. It had been a desperate gamble, inviting both Concordat leaders and rebel representatives to meet aboard the Horizon as neutral ground. No one had expected it to work. The initial meetings had been tense, with accusations flying from both sides. But then Paul Jackson had done something unexpected. He'd shown the aliens the schematics for the weapon that had disabled their fleet, a weapon he had reverse-engineered from studying the damaged systems. "This technology is now in human hands," Miller had told the stunned alien delegates. We don't want to use it. We don't want anyone to use it. What we want is for both sides to talk to each other instead of fighting. It wasn't that simple, of course. Centuries of concordate rule couldn't be undone in a few meetings, but it was a start. The Geneva Accords, as they came to be known, established new principles for relations between the concordate and its member worlds. Now, as Miller watched the ships move through space, she thought about how far they had come, and how far they still had to go. "The council is ready for you," said a young aide, interrupting her thoughts. Miller nodded and followed the aide through the ornate corridors of the station. Commander Zexitara walked beside her. "Are you nervous?" he asked. "A little," Miller admitted. "It's not every day you address representatives from 300 worlds." The Galactic Council chamber was a massive room with curved walls and a central platform. Seats rose in tiers around it, filled with aliens of every description. Some looked almost human. Others were so strange that Miller still had trouble thinking of them as people rather than objects or animals. But they were all intelligent beings with their own cultures, histories, and perspectives. As Miller took her place on the central platform, she saw familiar faces in the crowd. Paul Jackson sat with a group of engineers from different species. They had been working together, sharing ideas and approaches. Kate Rogers was there too, now heading the new Xenolinguistics Institute on Earth. Admiral Veshador sat with the other Concordat military leaders. He had opposed many of the changes, but even he couldn't deny that human innovation had saved his fleet and possibly prevented a destructive civil war. "Captain Susan Miller of Earth," announced the council speaker, a tall, thin alien with 6 limbs. "You may address the council." Miller took a deep breath. The speech she was about to give would shape humanity's future among the stars. "Honored representatives," she began. "3 months ago, the USS Horizon found your Armada stranded in space. We did what any human would do. We offered help. We didn't know then that this simple act would change the course of galactic history. Humans are newcomers to your community of worlds. We don't have your advanced technology or your centuries of experience. But perhaps that's why we were able to see solutions where others saw only problems. Sometimes fresh eyes can see what experienced ones miss. In the past 3 months, human engineers have worked with your experts to develop new power systems that are more resilient and adaptable. Human diplomats have helped open dialogues between groups that hadn't spoken in generations. And human ships are now trading with worlds throughout this sector, bringing new ideas and perspectives. Today I stand before you not just as a representative of Earth, but as proof that diversity makes us all stronger. The Concordat has existed for thousands of years, bringing stability to this region of space. But stability without growth leads to stagnation. The rebels sought freedom, but freedom without cooperation leads to chaos. What we've found together is a middle path, a way to honor tradition while embracing change." Miller paused, looking around the chamber. Some aliens were using their translation devices, but many were listening directly, having learned English in the months since first contact. "The agreement before you today establishes Earth as an independent associate of the Galactic Concordat. We will share knowledge and resources, but maintain our sovereignty. We will help mediate disputes between Concordat worlds and those seeking more independence. And most importantly, we will continue to learn from each other." As Miller finished speaking, a low sound filled the chamber, the various noises that different species made to show approval. The council speaker raised all 6 limbs for silence. "The council will now vote on the Earth Association Agreement." One by one, representatives from the different worlds registered their votes. Miller watched, her heart racing. This wasn't just about diplomatic status. It was about humanity's place in a much larger community than they had ever imagined. When the final vote was tallied, the speaker announced, "The agreement passes with 87% approval. Earth is now officially recognized as an independent associate of the Galactic Concordat." The chamber erupted in sounds of approval. Miller felt a wave of relief wash over her. They had done it. Later at the reception, Paul Jackson approached, Miller with a drink in his hand. Not bad for a routine exploration mission, eh, Captain? Miller laughed. Just a bit more exciting than we planned. I've been thinking, Paul said, his expression more serious, about why we were able to help when no one else could. And it's not that we're smarter or more creative. It's that we're still willing to try crazy ideas. These older civilizations, they've found patterns that work and they stick to them. They've forgotten how to think outside their comfortable boxes. Miller nodded. Commander Zexatara said something similar. He told me that in 4 centuries of life, he'd never seen a species so willing to ignore the proper way of doing things. Across the room, Kate Rogers was deep in conversation with aliens from 5 different worlds. They were all laughing at something she had said, a shared joke that bridged biological differences that had existed for millions of years. You know what I heard yesterday? Paul said with a smile. Some of the younger Concordat officers have started asking, what would humans do when they face a tough problem? We're becoming a galactic idiom. Miller looked out at the stars visible through the station's enormous windows. Somewhere out there, the first joint human-alien colony was being established on Mars. Earth ships were preparing to venture beyond the solar system for the first time, and countless alien species were learning about humanity, a strange young species that had shown the galaxy that sometimes the most advanced solution was simply the willingness to try something new. I think we're going to be okay out here, Miller said softly. Paul raised his glass. To humanity's place among the stars. Miller clinked her glass against his. And to good neighbors. Around them, the future of the galaxy was taking shape, one unexpected friendship at a time.